Hey guys, it's John with 757 Woodworks, and today I've got a confession. I have been using a bedroom dresser that I found a year and a half ago on the side of the road as a miter saw station, and it's time to fix it. So let's jump in. So here's the plan. I've got a 19-foot wall right here. I'm going to use 12 feet of it to build a miter saw station. I have two rolling toolboxes that I'm going to put under each wing, as well as a place for my air compressor right here. Couple of considerations that I have. I need to make sure that I have a cut line that is in front of the garage door. That way, in case I have any long pieces of wood, I can open the garage door if I need to. Secondly, I'm going to be putting my drill press and probably my rigid sander on top of this. So I need to make sure that they're also in front of the cut line so I don't have to move them constantly. So with that, I've got some plans in mind. I'll link those at the end of the video, and let's get started. I'm excited. For this build, we're going to be using basic 2x4 construction for the base. I've got all my measurements all ready to go. So the first step I'm going to do is break down everything to length at the miter saw. Now again, I am going to take a picture of the plans and put it at the end of the video if you want to repeat this build yourself. It is about 40 cuts in total, so I'm not going to bore you with all that. But one thing I'd highly recommend is a stop block of some sort. This is going to give you repeatable cuts and speed things along. Now, after I finish the cuts, I am going to take each board and rip off the rounded edges. This is completely optional. I just prefer the look personally, so let's go ahead and get into it. After about 30 minutes on the miter saw, I've cut 14 2x4s down to their correct lengths. At this point, I am going to take them over to the table saw and rip off the two edges on each one to make rectangles. Again, that's completely optional. And then from there, we'll start assembling. So my original plan for the miter saw station was to send screws through every 2x4 and just connect everything that way. I did build this jig for my Craig jig the other day, and I decided I'm gonna get some use out of it. So I'm gonna switch over to pocket holes and do pocket holes in everything except the legs, because they're not gonna need it. With that being said, I do highly recommend a vacuum if you're gonna be drilling 100+ pocket holes. So I've got my vacuum attached, and I'm gonna go ahead and do some pocket holes. Okay, so the pocket holes are drilled. I've got the first set of legs on my bench here, ready to be drilled together with pocket holes. On the bottom, I do have some 2x4 cutoffs to raise the bottom support leg up by 3.5 inches. So let's go ahead and get this drilled together, and then I've got 4 more legs to build after this. Okay, so I have all of the legs put together at this point. So there's 4 right there, and then I've got 1 more on the bench. So I'm currently attaching the cross beams to this particular leg. And I just wanted to show you how I did this to make sure that everything stayed as square as possible. So I took a parallel clamp, clamped this to the bottom, to the other side, and then I took a squeeze clamp and attached this to that, and left just enough room to be able to drive the screws home. I finished both sides. At this point, it is time to put the middle in. And the way that I'm going to do that, just as a heads up, I've got my measurement for my saw, which is about 3 3/4 inches. And then I've got the 3 inches for the width of my board. I'm going to end up screwing these pieces of plywood onto here so they're nice and strong, and then set it down, screw it in place, and then remove the pieces of plywood. So the base of the workbench is fully assembled at this point. I did do a few extra things. I added supports across each one of the spans. I did need to add another piece of 2x4 onto where the middle support connects. I did put some glue right here to reinforce that along with the pocket holes. If I was to redo it over, I would have done a 2x8 right here. That way it was one solid piece and then it would have been plenty strong. Right now I did sit on this. I'm close to 300 pounds. It didn't budge at all, so I'm pretty confident this is going to hold my saw without any problems. Down here I do have my air compressor in here to make sure it fits. And then from here I'm going to cut some plywood, get the miter saw mounted, and install the Woodpecker Stealth Stop into the top. That way I have a stop system / measurement system. So this concludes part 1 of the miter saw build. With that being said, I will be releasing the second part here shortly. Follow along, subscribe, like the video if this was helpful. I appreciate everybody watching. Y'all have